Two balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swinging a drive, deep left field. This is one back. Walk the ball. Chris Taylor.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com. My name is Jeff Spiegel. We got a three-person show throwback. Matt Moreno, Daniel Starkand joining us. We're gearing up for the trade deadline, so you know we've got tons to talk about. And today, it's great to be a Dodgers fan because we get to have these conversations that I don't think Kansas City Royals fans are having, which is Ohtani or Soto. Now, the backstory to this debate, real quick, is a friend of ours, Greg Bergman, who's the assistant program director over at ESPN Los Angeles, executive producer of the Mason and Ireland show. He posted a poll on Twitter that this is what it said. Let's say the same deal would get you either Ohtani or Soto. Let's say it's the top four prospects. Both sides agree, hypothetically, and they will sign a long-term deal. So basically, all things equal, would you rather have Soto or Ohtani? The results were 70.4% for Ohtani, 29.6% for Soto. So Matt, I'll start with you with just this question. Not what do you think, not where did you vote on Greg's poll, but were you surprised that it was 70% in favor of Ohtani?
Well, first I'll apologize to our viewers for not getting the memo about wearing a cap for, the big three-person show.
Your hair looks better than ours, so
I'll have to fall in line next time. But, in terms of the poll, it's a little surprising. I think, obviously, Ohtani, when he was making the jump over to Major League Baseball, the Dodgers were one of the teams that were involved in trying to sign him. He chose to sign with the Angels instead of the Dodgers, among other teams. And fans we've seen can have, a long memory. So maybe time has healed all. But then, the flip side, I sort of feel like we've been getting, a lot of responses when we put out Juan Soto stuff that, well, he's batting to whatever, his batting average is. And it's like, well, like, I'm a batting average guy. Like, I know that it's not a popular stat
anymore. That's going to get you crushed in the comments.
I know.
Here,
I'm not saying it's not end all be all, but I think there is some value to it. But I think with somebody like Juan Soto, like, maybe he's having a down year this year, but I mean, we'll get into the rest of that. But yes, at the end of the day, I was surprised.
Daniel, briefly, I mean, were you surprised? Again, not what do you think, but were you expecting it to be 70% one way or the other?
I'm not completely surprised. I just think more people know who Ohtani is. Like, I think even the most casual baseball fans, even people who don't follow baseball at this point, they know who Ohtani is. Whereas Soto, like, you really got to watch baseball to even know he is. I know he won the World Series in 2019, but since then he hasn't been in the playoffs. The Nats are obviously, I think they have the worst record or one of the worst records. Like, they're nowhere near the playoff picture. So not too many people are watching Nationals games on a daily basis. So maybe they don't quite understand like just how good Juan Soto is. So that could have something to do with it. But I also think at the end of the day, like, Shohei Ohtani pitches and Juan Soto doesn't. So I could see why more people would want a guy who hits like Juan Soto and pitches like an ace as well, just because, he gives you that much more.
Yeah. No, I was surprised, and I'll just sort of put my cards on the table. I would prefer Soto over Ohtani, and it's not any disrespect to Ohtani the player, and I genuinely mean that. This isn't the backhanded, like, no disrespect, but it's just a question of the thing with Ohtani is a philosophical thing about pitchers in general. Like, if I was hitching my wagon to one of these two guys for the next 10 years, I am far more confident in the 10-year length of contract health of a guy like Juan Soto, who is a corner outfielder / designated hitter and an elite hitter, versus Ohtani, who is a pitcher. Now, there's questions about long-term, is Ohtani going to be a pitcher for his entire career? At some point, does he just become a designated hitter, maybe a corner outfielder? These are all important questions because even as I look at his stats right now, as a hitter, I believe he has 1.9 wins above replacement according to Fangraphs. Now he has a 3.3 wins above replacement according to Fangraphs as a pitcher. You look at that in the grand scheme of things, only Aaron Judge has more combined wins above replacement. Judge is at 5.8. Ohtani would be 5.2. That would put him second. But among hitters, 1.9, I mean, you've got to scroll a couple pages on the Fangraph leaderboard before you get to 1.9. Like, we're talking in the 70s is where he ranks as a hitter. Now, 71st is where he ranks. So that's obviously this particular year. We've seen him be better. But I guess that's I'll put my cards on the table. Daniel, I'll let you respond first. That's my thing with Ohtani is, one is I question his health, and two, I question is if the arm becomes an issue or if at some point he becomes strictly a hitter, the gap between Soto and Ohtani is incredibly large, I think, offense. I shouldn't say incredibly large. That's a stretch. I think Soto is one of the top 3 hitters in baseball. I think Ohtani is a very good, even all-star level hitter, even if he were just a hitter, but he's not like top 5 hitter in all of baseball status. What do you think, Daniel?
I mean, the first thing I'll say is going back to kind of what you said at the beginning with the no disrespect thing. Like, this is like going to a steakhouse and deciding between a steak or a lobster. Like, there's really no bad choice here. 2 great players, 2 faces of the franchise type players, right? Like, so obviously, if the Dodgers get either of them, you know, it's a cause for celebration. But to me, I think it's Ohtani just because he does both. Like, and even if he only does that for a few years, the value that he would provide to the Dodgers in those few years, to me, that would be worth it when they have this window right now where they're competing for the World Series every year, seemingly. Like, I'm not too worried about 8-10 years down the line. If you get 5 good years out of either of these guys, I think it's totally worth it. But to me, Ohtani, that's just like having 2 players in one, and it allows you to do so many more things with your roster. Like, if you have a guy who's in your rotation, and not just in your rotation, he's a top of the line starter who you could also DH and stick in the middle of your order. And regardless of what you're paying him, you're getting 2 players in one, which means you have more money to go and do other things. So to me, I understand the health concerns with Ohtani. He's obviously already had, you know, some health scares. Like, he underwent Tommy John. So I get that, like, long-term, how long he's going to pitch. We'll see. I think he's healthy right now. He's having a great year on the mound. I don't think, you know, his health concerns are more than, like, let's say any other pitcher you'd be going out to get. But to me, I think the ability to have a player who's kind of 2 in 1 allows a team like the Dodgers, who we know loves mixing and matching and moving players around. It just allows you so much more flexibility. And I think just the combined, you know, what Ohtani does is more valuable than what Soto does to me, even though Soto is younger and he's more consistent, I'd say.
Yeah, and just looking, so Ohtani, just for some context, just turned 28 this month, and you look at his numbers, he's made 17 starts, just under 6 innings per start. He's got a 2.81 ERA, a FIP of 2.37, strikeout per 9 of 13, a walk per 9 of just 2. So that's him on the pitching side. On the offensive side, 96 games, 413 at-bats, hitting 250, 350 on base, 486 slugging percentage. So, you know, over an 800 OPS, he's got 21 home runs. So, again, there is no insulting what he is. I mean, the 800 OPS is what it is, but the 21 home runs is one of the best marks in all of baseball. And so you're getting a guy who has one of the best ERAs in baseball, one of the best pitching performances in baseball. And you're also getting a guy, as Daniel said, he's the 6th most valuable pitcher on Fangraphs, by the way, but then also hitting 21 home runs with an 800 OPS for you on the other side. Matt, where do you stand on the Ohtani and Soto debate?
Yeah, I mean,
I know you're not a lobster guy, so maybe you'd be less comfortable with one of these decisions. I don't know.
Yeah, when Daniel phrased it like that, I was thinking, well, if that's me, I'm taking steak every single time. But, you know, in this case, there is no wrong answer. Like Daniel said, if the Dodgers were able to trade for either one of them, it would be a remarkable addition. I'll preface all of that with, I don't see Ohtani getting traded, period, much less to the Dodgers. I'm even doubtful how inclined the Nationals are to move Ohtani Soto by the deadline. But if I had to pick, I think I would take Ohtani, and it's for a lot of the reasons that Daniel laid out. And, you know, he can do it on the mound as well as hitting. And the Dodgers, like Daniel touched on, are a team that, you know, value versatility. And this is a unique aspect of it, obviously, because we think of versatility in the Dodgers as like Chris Taylor, Zach McKinstry, even, totally. You know, Mookie Betts playing second base now, where this would be a completely new form of that for them. But I think their experience and history in being able to maximize players who fill multiple positions would help Ohtani. And frankly, even, you know, maybe some of the pitching information and hitting information that they would be able to give him might be able to elevate, you know, his pitching stats obviously are already a lot better than maybe some of he is offensively. So maybe some of the information they bring him helps with his hitting approach, and maybe that leads to, you know, a better OPS or whatever the case might be. But yeah, I mean, I think Ohtani, but, you know, if you told me, hey, the Dodgers can't trade for Ohtani, but they can trade for Juan Soto, like, nobody's going to say, well, no, actually it's Ohtani or nothing.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm looking back. Last year is an interesting year because Juan Soto finished second in Major League Baseball in Fangraphs wins above replacement with 7.0. if you add together Ohtani's hitting and pitching, he was at 8.1. That would have put him first in all of Major League Baseball by 0.8 wins above replacement. And so, to be clear on my pro Soto stance, I am not arguing that for the next 3 to 5 years, Ohtani won't be the most valuable. I would say definitely probably the next three. And from there is where it gets dicey. But again, and this is where it's sort of, personal preference. Daniel, your point is totally fair. It's like, we're the Dodgers. We're worried about the next 3 to 5 years. 6 through 10 will worry about themselves once we get down the road. For me, I just look at Soto, and he's the exception to that rule, because I'm like, Soto's 23 years old. His hit tool is what's going to carry him. It's something that's not going to diminish, not even the next 10 years, the next 15 years. He is potentially the lowest risk superstar as far as like what will his career look like in 5 to 10 years, like ever, as far as I'm concerned. And so for me, I actually am valuing that at a level where if I can get, to use last year as an example, I don't know if Soto will ever go above 7 and Ohtani will do 8.1 again. But if I'm getting 80 to 85% of Ohtani in Soto for the next 3 to 5 years, I feel pretty confident that I'm going to get a much larger percentage of Ohtani from Soto in the future. Like it's going to be 150%. It might be double for the back half of this contract that we're getting from Soto versus Ohtani if he has to miss a season from pitching or if he becomes strictly a hitter, whatever it might be. So I think it's just a personal preference piece. Anything you would add to that, Daniel?
The one thing I would add, I think everything you're saying is correct. And I also think Matt made one good point. Like we could sit here and debate.
Just one.
Well, one in particular that I want to point out, like we could sit here and debate all we want. Who would we want more?
Yeah.
But it really comes down to who's more gettable. And I would assume that Soto is much more gettable for the Dodgers. Like we've seen, the Nats and Dodgers front offices be willing to work together on a big trade just last year, right around this very day, I'd say. So we know they could do that. We know, Angels owner Artie Moreno is not exactly, the biggest fan of the Dodgers. I don't even know if he'd willing to be entertain offers from the Dodgers, period, even if they offered everything they got. So there's definitely that aspect of it. So we could sit here and debate who we want more, but I think it's unquestionably Soto who's more actually like attainable.
Totally.
Just to clarify really quick, no relation here to Artie Moreno, so I can't phone in any favors. Sorry, guys.
We forgot to mention Artie Moreno's son is joining us today. And I think it's totally fair. I think we all agree that Soto is the more gettable. He's clearly more available. There's no indications that the Angels are even willing to trade Ohtani or listening, whereas the Nationals have pretty much come out and said, we'll listen. And so we'll see what happens. Again, I think this is just an interesting debate because it reveals people's individual philosophies, short-term versus long-term, the value of pitching and whether or not you would sign up for a long-term contract on a pitcher. And then, of course, it has nothing to do with philosophy because nobody has a philosophy about Shohei Ohtani. We've never seen him. Matt and I were joking right before. Matt called him, sort of caught himself for saying he's a generational player because then we were both like, he's not generational. We've never seen this. Like, it's like a century, once in a century player. We've had lots of generations without a Shohei Ohtani. And of course, some would argue we've had lots of generations without a Juan Soto too, with the names that he's compared to. So I know the comments below will be lively, so please let us know. Soto versus Ohtani, were you surprised by the 70% number and all of that kind of thing? As always, with the trade deadline just a few days away, make sure you're checking out DodgerBlue.com, DodgerBlue1958 on social media. And of course, make sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell here on our YouTube channel as well. If there are any trades, big or small, we'll be the first to have content for you, so you're going to want to get all of that. That's Matt, and that's Daniel. We appreciate you guys joining us. We'll see you soon. Thanks.